What is going on, guys? It is WrestleGamia here, back with another video. Stats. Sports fans love them and wrestling fans are no different. Just look at how AEW have managed to capture their audience's attention by keeping win-loss records for each competitor. These same stats are also a big discussion point every time a new WWE video game is released. Each year, fans argue over the rankings of their favourites and their least favourites. Well, rather than just favourites, we're going to look at all those unfortunate ones who came in at the bottom of the pile. Those rarely played, often mocked wrestlers who were mostly used as personal challenges by players. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because today we're going to look at the worst rated playable wrestler in every WWE game since Smackdown Here Comes the Pain. Let's of course start off with that game, as it's a joint honour between Stephanie McMahon and SABLE, both coming in with 44. This one is understandable as neither of these women are wrestlers, and the few times that they have appeared in the ring have been some of the worst rated matches we've ever seen, most obviously their horrendous fight at 2003's Vengeance pay-per-view. These ratings unfortunately reflect the place of women's wrestling in the company at the time, as none of the women in this game managed to get a ranking above 50, falling below the likes of Rico and even Eric Bischoff. WWE Day of Reckoning, STACY KEIBLER, rating 52. This GameCube exclusive is one of the lesser played WWE games, and the lowest ranking in it is another entry that shouldn't come as a surprise given the former Miss Hancock was primarily used as a valet and eye candy and never managed to become much in the ring. This wasn't quite the darkest days for the women's division in the WWE yet, as the Divas Search was only just getting started and hadn't reached its full lows, but it's still tough to look back on these days in comparison to where we are now, and we're light years ahead. WWE Smackdown vs Raw, STACY KEIBLER and Torrie Wilson, rating 54. Another dead last entry for STACY KEIBLER, this time joined by Torrie Wilson, who was arguably even worse in the ring. Once again, it's hard to argue with these character ratings, although at this point it seems as if each woman on the roster is getting a 10 at the bottom. Can you imagine watching the bra and panties matches between these two and thinking this was the same company that would one day have a women's main event at WrestleMania? No, we didn't either. WWE WrestleMania 21, Nydia, rating 33. The debut Tough Enough winner didn't fare well in this game, even managing to fall below the two-time worst rated STACY KEIBLER, who as we have already established was not that great. We think it's a little unfair to rank Nydia this low, a ranking which also qualifies as the worst in any WWE game, as while she wasn't the best wrestler, there were far worse and she did improve in terms of ring work and character over the years, certainly a lot better than Maven did, her co-Tough Enough winner. WWE Day of Reckoning 2, STACY KEIBLER, rating 53. STACY KEIBLER once again falls to the bottom of the list in this Day of Reckoning sequel and final GameCube exclusive, but she did manage to improve by a point from her score in WrestleMania 21, which is something. It wasn't enough to keep her from the bottom, however, but to be fair, she probably had one foot out of the door at this point and would soon go on to more mainstream success on Dancing with the Stars, only returning to wrestler to induct her real-life best friend Torrie Wilson into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2019. WWE Smackdown vs Raw 2006, Joy Giovanni and Michelle McCool, rating 53. Another tied bottom ranking. The Divas Search was by now in full swing and it lowered the bar significantly. Mostly made up of models that had little interest in wrestling and were looking for a big break, few of them shone in the ring. The worst among them this year, according to developers Ukes, were Joy Giovanni and the future Mrs. Calloway Michelle McCool. We can't really argue with either of these, as they're both terrible, and unfortunately, it would only get worse from here. WWE Smackdown vs Raw 2007, Jillian Hall, rating 51. Another Diva Search alumni, Jillian Hall was representative of the women's division at its complete worst. A shrill, annoying character and awful in-ring work. These really were the darkest days for the women's division in WWE. WWE Smackdown vs Raw 2008, Kelly, rating 58. And now we reach the absolute bottom of the barrel. Perhaps the poster girl for the Diva Search era in WWE, the real-life named Bobby Blank, was hired seemingly because she looked good in a bikini, with her most memorable moments coming during her extreme expose striptease character. In the ring, she was one of the worst WWE had ever seen. Thankfully, we've moved on and grown up from these kind of acts in WWE. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2009, LAYLA, rating 66. Michelle McCool's LayCool tag partner gets her moment in the spotlight as the worst rated character in this edition of the series. We think it's slightly unfair on LAYLA as, once again, she was never great in the ring, but she was better than many other women on the roster at the time, including her tag partner. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2010, Eve Torres, rating 65. This has become a bit of a pattern, hasn't it? This year's Diva Search contestant who drew the short straw was Eve Torres. Again, Eve was awful, but in her defense, you could have picked from about another half dozen women on the roster at the time and gotten someone just as bad. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2011, DRUID, rating 55. The streak is over. For the first time, a male has been given the lowest character rating in a WWE game. At least we think it's a male, the game unfortunately doesn't specify. This is obviously a novelty character, and not one that many people would play as, and so it's understandable that this one would come in at the lowest rating. To be honest, we'd forgotten the character had even ever existed. WWE 12, MARYSE, rating 66. It's back to the divas this year as MARYSE gets the lowest rating of any character in this edition of the game. MARYSE didn't really become entertaining until she returned as a valet for The Miz in 2016, and she never really did much in the ring even then. Back at this point, she had few if any redeeming features, though she wasn't as bad as Kelly in our opinion. Okay, we're gonna stop ragging on her now. WWE 13, Stephanie McMahon, rating 74. For the second time, the $1 Billion Princess bottoms the ratings list in the WWE game franchise. Once again, it's well deserved as she's always been awful with the little in-ring work she's done, but to be honest, we don't even think she was an active wrestler at this point. Somehow that makes her much better with a rating of 74. It's actually quite funny in a way that this was allowed as she is a McMahon and her husband has been famously hesitant to be shown as weak in this series in the past. WWE 2K14, Summer Rae, rating 75. The first in the franchise to go under the now familiar 2K moniker, this year it was Summer Rae who narrowly beat out the Bella Twins to get the lowest ranking in the game. As with others who came bottom in previous editions, Summer was awful in every aspect. It's a sign of good progress that even the worst in the women's division today are generally far superior to this. Just look at Lacey Evans. Back in these days, she would have probably been considered one of the better women on the roster. WWE 2K15, Summer Rae, rating 73. Summer Rae does it again, this time falling by 2 points from last year to get the lowest rating in the critically lambasted 2K15. She's probably still deserving of this one, to be honest. There's not much else that can be added, and the less said about 2K15 the better. WWE 2K16, Cameron, rating 73. Narrowly costing Summer Rae the hat-trick, Cameron was the lowest ranked wrestler in the third in the 2K series, beating her out by 1 point. We can imagine few fans even remember who Cameron is at this point, as she amounted to pretty much nothing in WWE, but we have to take umbrage with the fact that she was ranked lower than Eva Marie, possibly the worst wrestler to ever set foot in a wrestling ring, and that's including Kelly. Okay, we did say we'd stop there. WWE 2K17, Eva Marie, and Bo Dallas, rating 67. Well, it looks like we spoke too soon because this year, Eva Marie was given the lowest ranking in the game. What's funnier though is that poor Bo Dallas found himself joint last along with her. Poor Bo, he's no Daniel Bryan or anything, but he's not that bad. He also has the distinction of being the first confirmed male character to take the lowest ranking spot. WWE 2K18, Curt Hawkins, rating 72. Perhaps appropriately given his character as the ultimate jobber, Curt Hawkins gets the lowest ranking in this installment of the 2K series. The Women's Revolution was well underway by this point, so it's good to see that none of them came bottom this year, and it's hard to argue that Curt Hawkins was one of the weakest members of the roster, with this coming right in the midst of his infamous 269 match losing streak. WWE 2K19, Curt Hawkins, rating 64. Curt Hawkins continues to mirror his character's losing streak in WWE by taking a 2-time worst ranking of the year in the 2K series. Once again, it's not entirely undeserved, as Curt has done nothing on the roster and will continue to go nowhere for the most part. And lastly, WWE 2K20, Ribby, rating 60. And finally we reach the newest and perhaps most hated game in WWE history. Emotions are still high when it comes to this game, but one emotion that must have struck players when they were introduced to this character is pure confusion. Who is Ribby? Well, he's a giant rib with sunglasses on. The name appears to have a double meaning, as it seems the character's entry is a giant rib on the fans who bought the game. Maybe this wasn't the best year to do that one, guys. But there you have it, guys. Every worst rated playable wrestler since Smackdown Here Comes the Pain. Maybe we should just do a male only version next time, as the list was dominated by females. Would you guys like that? Let us know in the comments down below, and let us know what you think of these ratings. Are they well deserved? As always, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling video game content.